The red trees of New Haven stretched high into the purple sky. 7-year-old Minho walked slowly behind his parents, looking at everything with wide eyes. His family had come to the forest to collect water samples from the stream. His father, Daeho, carried the testing equipment in a large bag. His mother, Hyejin, held a scanner that beeped softly as they walked. "Stay close, Minho," his mother said without turning around. "The forest is dangerous." Minho nodded, but his attention was already somewhere else. A strange sound came from the trees to his left. It was not a normal sound. It was like crying, but deeper and more frightening. The boy stopped walking and turned his head toward the noise. "Minho, come on," his father called. But Minho was curious. The sound came again, longer this time. It sounded like something was in pain. Without thinking much, the boy stepped off the path and walked toward the sound. The red trees were thick here, and the ground was covered with soft purple moss. His small feet made no noise as he walked. Behind him, his parents kept walking, not noticing that he had left the path. Minho pushed through some low branches and stopped. His breath caught in his throat. In front of him was the biggest creature he had ever seen. It looked like a wolf, but it was much, much bigger. Its body was covered in thick gray fur that seemed to shine in the dim light. Sharp spikes ran down its back. Its legs were as thick as tree trunks, and its paws had claws as long as Minho's hands. The creature was rolling on the ground, making terrible sounds. Its massive head moved from side to side. Minho could see its eyes. They were a bright amber color, and they were filled with pain. The boy should have been afraid. His parents had told him many stories about the Vralkan, the wolf creatures that lived in these forests. They were predators. They were dangerous. They had killed many people on other colonies. But as Minho watched the creature suffer, he did not feel fear. He felt sorry for it. He took a small step forward. The creature's head snapped toward him. Its lips pulled back, showing teeth as long as knives. A deep growl came from its throat. Minho froze, but he did not run away. "It's okay," the boy said softly. "I won't hurt you." The Vralkan stopped growling. Its amber eyes stared at the small human child. Minho could see something stuck in the creature's nose. It was a thorn, but not like earth thorns. This one was made of crystal, and it glowed with a faint blue light. The thorn was buried deep in the creature's right nostril. Blood, dark purple in color, dripped from the wound. Minho took another step forward. The creature growled again, but softer this time. It did not try to move away. The boy could see that the Vralkan was exhausted from fighting the pain. "That must hurt a lot," Minho whispered. He came closer, his heart beating fast, but his feet still moving. "I can help you. I promise I'll be gentle." The creature watched him with those bright eyes. When Minho was close enough to touch it, the Vralkan lowered its huge head to the ground. Its breath was hot and smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The boy could have reached out and touched its teeth. One bite could cut him in half, but Minho was not thinking about that. He was thinking about how much pain the creature must be feeling. He had once gotten a splinter in his finger, and it had hurt so much he cried. This thorn was much bigger, and it was stuck in such a sensitive place. The boy knelt down in the moss. He was so close to the creature now that he could see his reflection in its amber eyes. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his small hand. The Vralkan's eyes followed his movement, but it stayed still. "I'm going to pull it out now," Minho said, talking to the creature like it could understand him. "It might hurt more for a second, but then it will feel better. I promise." His fingers touched the crystal thorn. It was cold and smooth. He could feel it vibrating slightly. The Vralkan made a low sound, almost like a whimper. Minho got a good grip on the thorn with his thumb and finger. "On 3, he said. 1, 2, 3, he pulled hard. The thorn did not want to come out. Minho pulled harder, using both hands now. The creature's whole body went stiff. Its claws dug into the ground. Then suddenly the thorn came free. The Vralkan threw its head back and howled. The sound was so loud that it hurt Minho's ears. Birds flew up from the trees all around them. The boy fell backward, still holding the bloody thorn in his hands. For a moment, everything was quiet. The creature looked at him with its amber eyes. Dark purple blood still dripped from its nose, but already the flow was slowing down. The Vralkan took a deep breath through its nostrils, then another. Its eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened again, they looked different. The pain was gone. The massive creature stood up slowly. It was even bigger standing than lying down. Its head was higher than the tree branches. It could have killed Minho with one swipe of its paw, but it didn't. Instead, the Vralken lowered its enormous head down to Minho's level. The boy stayed very still. The creature's nose came close to him, sniffing. Its whiskers tickled his face. Then very gently it pressed its forehead against Minho's chest. The boy could feel the warmth of its fur and the steady beat of its heart. They stayed like that for several seconds. Then the Vralken lifted its head and looked at Minho one more time. The boy thought he saw something in those amber eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or gratitude. The creature turned and walked away, moving through the forest without making a sound despite its huge size. In seconds it was gone, disappeared between the red trees. Minho stood there, still holding the crystal thorn. His hands were shaking now. He suddenly realized what he had just done. He had touched a Vralken. He had helped it. And he was still alive. Minho! His mother's voice cut through the forest. She sounded terrified. Minho, where are you? The boy quickly put the crystal thorn in his pocket and ran back toward the path. He found his parents standing there looking around with wild eyes. His father had pulled out a weapon, a small energy pistol that colonists were allowed to carry. I'm here, Minho called. His mother rushed to him and grabbed him in a tight hug. Don't ever do that again. We heard a Vralken howl. She couldn't finish the sentence. I'm sorry, Minho said. I just wanted to look at something. His father checked him over, looking for injuries. Did you see anything dangerous? Minho thought about the huge creature with amber eyes. He thought about how gentle it had been, even while in terrible pain. He thought about the feeling of its forehead pressed against his chest. No, he said finally. I didn't see anything dangerous. They walked back to the colony together. Minho kept his hand in his pocket, feeling the smooth surface of the crystal thorn. He didn't tell his parents what had really happened. He wasn't sure they would believe him anyway. That night, lying in his bed, Minho looked out his window at the dark forest. Somewhere out there, the Vralken was probably with its pack, breathing easily now that the thorn was gone. The boy smiled and closed his eyes. He didn't know that this one small act of kindness would change everything. He didn't know that the Vralken would remember him. He didn't know that very soon both their lives would depend on the bond they had formed in the forest that day. All he knew was that he had helped someone who was hurting, and that felt good. 3 weeks passed after Minho's encounter in the forest. Life in New Haven Colony continued as it always had. People went to work in the morning. Children went to school. Families ate dinner together in the evening. Everything seemed normal, but things were not normal in the wider region. Reports came in from other colonies. Raiders were attacking settlements on nearby planets. These raiders were not from any known government or organization. They were criminals who traveled through space, stealing valuable resources and technology. They had weapons, ships, and no mercy. Deho heard the news at his workplace. He came home one evening looking worried. Hyejin noticed immediately. What's wrong? She asked, setting down a plate of food. The Tewu colony was attacked yesterday, Deho said quietly, glancing at Minho and his 5-year-old sister Nari to make sure they weren't listening too closely. The children were playing with blocks in the corner. The raiders took everything. Medical supplies, computer systems, even their water purifiers. Hyejin's hand went to her mouth. Were people hurt? 17 injured. 3 killed. Deho sat down heavily. The colony's military couldn't stop them. These raiders have military-grade weapons. Will they come here? Hyejin whispered. I don't know. Captain Yunji called a meeting for tomorrow. All adults have to attend. Minho looked up from his blocks. He had been listening even though his parents thought he wasn't. Papa, what are raiders? Deho tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nothing for you to worry about, son. Just some bad people far away. But Minho could tell his father was lying. Adults always said things were fine when they weren't. The boy felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The next few days were strange. More adults walked around with weapons. The colony's defense walls were checked and repaired. Guards stood at the gates all day and all night. Children were told not to go near the forest alone. Minho missed the forest. He thought about the Vralken often. He still had the crystal thorn hidden in a box under his bed. Sometimes at night he would take it out and look at it. The thorn still glowed faintly with blue light. One evening after dinner, Minho asked if he could play outside for a little while. His mother said yes, but only if he stayed where she could see him from the window. The boy went out to the small yard behind their house. The yard ended where the forest began, about 50 meters away. The sun was setting, turning the sky beautiful shades of orange and pink. Minho threw a ball against the wall of the house and caught it. He did this over and over, but his eyes kept drifting to the forest. Then he saw it. A shape moved between the red trees. It was big and gray. Minho's heart started beating faster. He knew that shape. He would never forget it. The Vralcan stepped out of the forest. It was the same one. Minho was sure of it. The creature had the same amber eyes, the same scar pattern on its shoulder. It stood at the edge of the trees watching the boy. Minho looked back at his house. Through the window, he could see his mother cooking in the kitchen. She wasn't looking outside right now. His father was at a meeting. Nari was probably in her room. The boy made a decision. He walked toward the forest. The Vralcan didn't move as Minho got closer. When the boy was about 10 meters away, he stopped. They looked at each other for a long moment. "Hi," Minho said quietly. "I remember you. Is your nose all better?" The creature made a low sound, almost like a rumble. Then it did something surprising. It turned its head and looked back into the forest. It looked at Minho again. Then it looked at the forest once more. "You want me to follow you?" Minho asked. The Vralcan took a few steps into the trees and stopped. It looked back at Minho. The boy knew he shouldn't go into the forest. His parents would be so angry. It was getting dark. It was dangerous. But something told him this was important. The Vralcan had come here for a reason. Minho followed the creature into the forest. They didn't go far, maybe 200 meters. The Vralcan led him to a small clearing. And there Minho saw something that made him gasp. There were more of them. 7 more Vralcan stood in the clearing. They were all different sizes. Some were as big as the one Minho had helped. Others were smaller, maybe younger. They all had the same gray fur, the same amber eyes, the same sharp spikes down their backs. The boy should have been terrified. He was alone in the forest with 8 giant predators. But he wasn't afraid. Something about the way they looked at him told him they weren't going to hurt him. The Vralcan he had helped walked to the center of the clearing. It made a series of sounds, growls, rumbles, and something that sounded almost like words. The other creatures listened. Some of them looked at Minho with interest. Then all of them started moving. They walked out of the clearing, heading in the same direction. The one Minho knew looked back at him and made that rumbling sound again. "You want me to follow?" the boy asked. The creature nodded its massive head. Minho was sure it nodded. They walked through the forest for maybe 20 minutes. It was getting darker now. Minho knew he should go home. His mother would be worried. But he kept following. Finally, they came to the edge of the forest, but on the opposite side from the colony. Below them was a valley. And in that valley, Minho saw lights. Lots of lights. They weren't the warm lights of homes or campfires. They were the harsh white lights of ships and equipment. The boy's stomach dropped. He understood what he was seeing. These were raiders. They were setting up camp in the valley. There were ships, weapons, tents, and many people moving around. Minho counted at least 50 people, maybe more. They had equipment that looked military, and they were close. Too close to the colony. The Vralcan beside Minho made a low growl. It wasn't angry. It sounded worried. The creature looked at the raiders, then at Minho, then back at the raiders. "You're trying to warn me," Minho whispered. "You're warning me that they're here." The Vralcan looked directly into his eyes. In that moment, Minho felt a connection he couldn't explain. This creature, this predator that was supposed to be his enemy, was trying to protect him. It was trying to protect the colony. "I have to tell my parents," Minho said. "I have to tell Captain Yunji." The creature nodded again. Minho was certain now it understood him, at least somewhat. The boy turned and ran. The Vralcan pack followed him through the forest, moving silently despite their size. When they reached the edge near the colony, they stopped. Minho ran across the open space to his house. He burst through the door. His mother was there, and she looked angry and scared at the same time. "Minho, where have you been?" "I've been looking everywhere." She grabbed him by the shoulders. "Mama, listen. There are raiders. In the valley on the other side of the forest." "I saw them." His mother's face went pale. "What? How do you—" "We have to tell everyone. They're really close. They have big ships and weapons." Daiho came running in from the street. He had been out looking for Minho, too. "What's going on?" "Minho says there are raiders in the South Valley," Yejin said, her voice shaking. "I saw them, Papa. There are so many of them. The Vralcan showed me." "The what?" Daeho stared at his son. There was no time to explain everything. Minho grabbed his father's hand. Please, you have to believe me. We have to tell Captain Yunji. Something in the boy's voice made Daeho listen. Come on, he said. We'll go to the command center. They ran through the colony streets. Other people saw them running and followed, sensing something was wrong. By the time they reached the command center, there was a small crowd. Captain Yunji was there, a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. She looked at the group of people crowding into her office. What's this about? She asked. Daeho pushed Minho forward. Tell her what you told us. Minho took a deep breath. There are raiders setting up camp in the South Valley. I saw them. They have ships and weapons. Lots of them, Captain Yunji frowned. How do you know this? Did you see them on a scanner? No, I went into the forest and you went into the forest alone? At night? The captain looked at Daeho and Hyejin with disapproval. He says the Vralkan showed him, Daeho said quietly. The room went silent. Everyone stared at Minho. The Vralkan showed you, Captain Yunji repeated slowly. Son, the Vralkan are dangerous predators. They don't help humans, but they did. One of them led me to where I could see the raiders. They're trying to warn us. Captain Yunji looked like she didn't believe him at all. But another officer, a man named Taiho, spoke up. Captain, what if he's right? Not about the Vralkan part, but about the raiders. If there is a group in the South Valley, we need to know. The captain thought for a moment. All right. Send a drone to scan the South Valley. We'll see what's there. They had to wait 20 minutes for the drone to fly out and back. Those 20 minutes felt like hours to Minho. What if he was wrong? What if the raiders had moved? What if he got in trouble for making everyone worry? But then the drone operator's face went white. Captain, you need to see this. The images came up on the main screen. There, clear as day, was the raider camp. Ships, weapons, equipment, and at least 60 armed people. They were positioned in a way that would let them attack the colony quickly. Everyone in the room started talking at once. Captain Yunji held up her hand for silence. How did you know they were there? She asked Minho. The boy looked at the floor. The Vralkan showed me. The one I helped. What do you mean, the one you helped? So Minho told them the whole story. Dawn came too quickly. The sky turned from black to dark blue to pale orange. Minho sat in the underground shelter with his family and dozens of other people. The shelter was cold and smelled like metal. Small lights hung from the ceiling, casting shadows on everyone's worried faces. Nari sat on their mother's lap, sucking her thumb. She was too young to understand what was happening. Hyejin held her daughter tight, her eyes closed as if she was praying. Daeho sat next to them, checking his energy pistol over and over even though he had already checked it 10 times. Minho couldn't sit still. He kept standing up and walking around looking at the shelter door. Other children were crying. Some adults tried to comfort them, but their voices shook when they spoke. Sit down, Minho, his father said quietly. They're out there. Minho whispered. The Vralkan are still out there. I know they are. Even if they are, they can't help us against raiders with weapons, Daeho replied. Captain Yunji has 30 soldiers. The raiders have twice that many. We just have to hope the colony's defensive shields hold. But Minho knew something the adults didn't. He knew that the Vralkan had chosen to warn them. Creatures that only cared about themselves wouldn't do that. There was a reason they had stayed near the colony instead of running away from the coming danger. Above ground, Captain Yunji stood on the colony's main wall. The wall was made of reinforced metal and concrete, 3 meters high. It surrounded the whole colony like a ring. Soldiers stood at their positions, weapons ready. Energy cannons were mounted at intervals along the wall. Taiho stood beside the captain, looking through binoculars at the forest. No movement yet, he reported. They'll come, Yunji said. The question is when. Behind them, technicians worked on the colony's defense shield generator. The shield would create an energy barrier above the colony, protecting them from attacks from above. But it wouldn't stop people from attacking the walls directly. The sun climbed higher. An hour passed. Then another. Then the attack began. The raiders came out of the forest on the south side just as Minho had said they would. They had vehicles, heavy trucks with armor plating and mounted weapons. Soldiers on foot ran beside the vehicles carrying rifles that glowed with energy charges. Shields up, Captain Yunji shouted. The defense shield hummed to life, creating a shimmering dome over the colony. Immediately, the raiders opened fire. Energy bolts hit the shield and dissipated. Explosions from rocket launchers splashed harmlessly against the barrier, but shields used a lot of power. Captain Yunji knew they could only keep it up for maybe 2 hours before the generators overheated. The raiders knew this too. They kept up constant fire, trying to drain the shield's power. Their vehicles moved closer to the walls. "Return fire," Yunji commanded. The colony soldiers fired their weapons. Energy bolts and bullets flew toward the raiders. Some found their targets. Raiders fell, but more came to take their place. There were so many of them. One of the raider vehicles had a large cannon. It fired once, and the blast made the entire shield flicker. Warning lights started flashing on the generator controls. "Shield at 70%, a technician called out. The cannon fired again. The shield flickered more. 50%. "We can't take many more hits like that," Taiho said urgently. Captain Yunji made a decision. "Drop the shield. Focus all power to the wall cannons. We'll have to fight them directly." The shield went down. Immediately, the raiders increased their assault. Explosions hit the colony walls. The metal held, but cracks started to appear. Raiders with climbing equipment began scaling the walls on the east side. Soldiers rushed to stop them. Gunfire echoed through the morning air. The smell of burning metal filled the sky. In the shelter, everyone could hear the battle above. The explosions made the ground shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. Nari started crying. Other children joined her. Minho stood up. He couldn't stay here anymore. While everyone was focused on comforting the children, he slipped toward the shelter door. "Minho, no." His father saw him and started to rise, but the boy was already opening the door and running up the stairs. He could hear his father calling behind him, but he didn't stop. Minho emerged into chaos. Smoke filled the air. Buildings were damaged. He could hear the weapons firing from the walls. He ran toward the south side of the colony, toward the forest. A soldier saw him and yelled, "Kid, get back to the shelter." But Minho kept running. He reached the wall and found a ladder that maintenance workers used. He climbed up, his small hands gripping each rung tight. When he reached the top, he saw the battle clearly. Raiders were everywhere, attacking from 3 sides now. The colony soldiers were fighting hard, but they were being overwhelmed. Several raiders had made it over the east wall and were fighting in the streets. And then Minho saw them. The Vralkan pack stood at the edge of the forest, watching. All 8 of them, including the one Minho had helped. They weren't moving. They just watched as the humans fought. "Please," Minho whispered, even though they were too far away to hear him. "Please help us." As if hearing his thoughts, the lead Vralkan, Minho's friend, lifted its head and howled. The sound cut through all the noise of the battle. It was long and loud and impossible to ignore. Everyone stopped for a moment. Raiders and colonists alike turned to look. Then the Vralkan charged. 8 massive creatures burst from the forest at incredible speed. They were like gray lightning, covering the ground between the trees and the raiders in seconds. The lead Vralkan hit the first raider vehicle with such force that it flipped completely over. Chaos erupted. Raiders who had been shooting at the colony walls suddenly had to defend themselves from behind. But how do you defend yourself against something that moves faster than you can aim, and has claws that can cut through metal? The Vralkan were devastating. One of them grabbed a raider in its jaws and threw him 10 meters away. Another used its spiked tail to smash a weapon emplacement. The largest one, not the one Minho knew, but maybe the pack leader, roared so loud that several raiders dropped their weapons and ran. But these weren't ordinary raiders. They were trained fighters. After the initial shock, they started coordinating. They formed groups and concentrated their fire on individual Vralkan. One of the younger Vralkan yelped in pain as energy bolts hit its side. It stumbled but kept fighting. Another was bleeding from several wounds but refused to retreat. The lead Vralkan, Minho's friend, fought its way through the raiders toward the heavy cannon. That cannon was still the biggest threat to the colony. If it kept firing, the walls would eventually fall. Raiders surrounded the cannon, protecting it. They fired everything they had at the approaching Vralkan. The creature's fur was scorched in places. Blood dripped from cuts on its shoulders and legs. But it didn't stop. With a final burst of speed, it leaped over the raiders and landed on the cannon itself. Its weight and force crushed the weapon, bending it beyond repair. The raiders scattered. On the colony wall, Captain Yunji watched in amazement. "All units, the Vralkan are fighting the raiders." "Do not fire on the Vralkan. Focus on the raiders only." The colonists rallied. With the raiders now fighting on 2 fronts, the humans pressed their advantage. Soldiers fired with renewed energy. The wall cannons targeted the raider vehicles, destroying them one by one. The battle began to turn. But the raider commander was desperate. He saw his forces being decimated by the unexpected alliance of humans and Vrelkan. He made a terrible decision. Fall back, he ordered his troops. Fall back to the south position. The raiders began retreating, but as they did, the commander activated something on his wrist device. In the middle of the battlefield, one of the damaged raider vehicles started beeping. Lights flashed on its control panel. Minho saw it happen. He didn't know exactly what it was, but he knew it was bad. The beeping got faster and faster. The lead Vralkan was close to that vehicle. It was fighting 3 raiders at once, its attention focused on them. It didn't notice the beeping. Without thinking, Minho screamed, "Look out!" "The vehicle!" The Vralkan's ears twitched. Its amber eyes found Minho on the wall, then looked at the vehicle. The creature understood immediately. It could have run away. It could have saved itself. But instead it grabbed the vehicle in its massive jaws. The metal crunched under the pressure of its teeth. Then, with strength that seemed impossible, it picked up the entire vehicle and ran. It ran toward the forest, away from the colony, away from the other Vralkan, away from everyone. "No," Minho shouted. "No, no, no." The Vralkan ran faster than Minho had ever seen anything move. It covered 50 meters, then 100, then 200. It was almost to the tree line when the explosion happened. The blast was enormous. It lit up the entire valley like a second sun. The shockwave knocked people off their feet. Windows shattered throughout the colony. The sound was deafening. Where the explosion had been, there was now a crater in the ground. Smoke and dust filled the air so thick that nothing could be seen. The raiders used the confusion to escape. They ran to their remaining vehicles and fled, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Captain Yunji ordered her soldiers to let them go. The colony had won, but at what cost? Minho climbed down from the wall and ran. His father was calling for him, but the boy didn't stop. He ran through the colony gates, which had been damaged in the fighting. He ran across the scorched ground where Dr. Sunho arrived at the crater within minutes. He was a middle-aged man with gray in his hair and steady hands. He had been a surgeon on Earth before coming to New Haven Colony to start a new life. He had treated many injuries during his career, but never anything like this. "Move back," he said to the crowd gathering around the crater. His medical team followed him down the slope, carrying equipment. The 7 Vralkan at the crater's edge growled low in their throats. They didn't trust these new humans approaching their injured packmate. One of them, a large female, stepped forward and showed her teeth. "They won't let you near him," Captain Yunji said. She had her weapon ready but pointed at the ground. She didn't want to shoot, but she would if she had to protect her people. Minho stood up. He was still next to the wounded Vralkan's head, his small hand resting on its fur. "They'll let the doctor help," he said with more confidence than he felt. "They know we want to help, right?" He looked at the 7 Vralkan. Their amber eyes stared back at him. The boy took a deep breath and spoke to them like he had spoken to their packmate in the forest weeks ago. "The doctor is good. He fixes hurt people. He can fix your friend, but you have to let him come close. Please, I promise we won't hurt him." The large female Vralkan tilted her head. She looked at Minho for a long moment. Then she looked at her wounded packmate. The injured one made a soft sound, barely audible. The female's ears twitched. She stepped back. "They understand you," Dr. Sunho said quietly, watching this exchange. "I don't know how, but they do." "They're smart," Minho said. "People just never gave them a chance to show it." Dr. Sunho and his team carefully approached the wounded Vralkan. The creature's eyes followed them, but it didn't move. It was too weak to be dangerous now, even if it wanted to be. The doctor began his examination. The Vralkan had burns covering much of its body. Several ribs were broken. The leg was definitely fractured. There were numerous cuts and puncture wounds from the battle. Internal bleeding was likely. "This is bad," Dr. Sunho said. "I don't know Vralkan anatomy. I don't know what medicines will work on them. I don't even know their blood type." "Figure it out," Captain Yunji said firmly. "This creature saved our colony. We owe it our best effort. I'll do what I can, but I'll need help. We'll have to move it to the medical center." That was easier said than done. The wounded Vralkan weighed at least 800 kilograms. It took a heavy cargo lifter and 6 soldiers to carefully raise the creature and transport it. The other 7 Vralkan followed the whole way, walking on both sides like an honor guard. People came out of their homes and shelters to watch the strange procession. A Vralkan being brought into the colony itself was unheard of. Many people looked scared. Some looked angry. But when they saw Minho walking beside the creature, his small hand touching its fur, some of their fear faded. At the medical center, Dr. Sunho set up in the largest room they had, usually used for surgery. The wounded Vralkan was laid carefully on the floor. The regular medical beds would never hold its weight. Everyone out except essential personnel, Dr. Sunho ordered. And someone needs to keep those other Vralkan calm. They can stay near the windows, Captain Yunji suggested. Let them see we're helping. The 7 Vralkan positioned themselves outside the medical center, looking through the large windows. Inside, Dr. Sunho and his team worked frantically. They started with the bleeding. The doctor used a combination of standard medical supplies and improvisation. Human blood coagulants seemed to work on the Vralkan's purple blood, though he couldn't be sure if there would be side effects later. The broken leg required setting. It took 3 people to hold the limb steady while Dr. Sunho aligned the bone. The Vralkan whimpered but didn't snap or bite. Minho held its head and whispered comfort the whole time. "You're being so brave," the boy said softly. "It's going to be okay. I promise it's going to be okay." Hours passed. The sun that had risen on a battle now began to set on something different. Humans and Vralkan working together, each trying to save the other. Dr. Sunho gave the creature fluids through an IV. He treated the burns with special gel. He bandaged dozens of wounds. By the time he was finished, the Vralkan looked like it was wrapped in white cocoon. "I've done all I can," Dr. Sunho said, exhausted. "The rest is up to its own body. It needs rest, water, and time." "Will it live?" Minho asked. The doctor looked at the boy's hopeful face. "I don't know, but it's stronger than I expected. If it survived that explosion at all, maybe it can survive this too." They set up a monitoring system. Every hour, someone checked the Vralkan's vital signs. The 7 others stayed outside, keeping watch. They didn't eat. They didn't leave. They just waited. Minho's parents came to bring him home, but the boy refused to leave. "I have to stay," he insisted. "What if he wakes up and I'm not here? He'll be scared." Hyejin looked at her son, then at the massive creature he was so determined to protect. She saw something in that moment that made her proud and heartbroken at the same time. Her little boy had found something worth fighting for, even when it made no sense to anyone else. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I'm staying with you." They brought blankets and set up a small camp in the medical center. Nari came too, though she fell asleep quickly. Daiho sat with his family, one hand on his son's shoulder. Through the night, the Vralkan's breathing stayed steady but weak. Dr. Sunho checked on it every few hours, adjusting treatments as needed. By the second day, news of what happened at New Haven Colony had spread to other settlements. Messages came in from neighboring planets. Everyone wanted to know about the Vralkan that had fought alongside humans. A delegation from the Galactic Council sent word that they would arrive within a week. The Council oversaw relations between different species across many star systems. They had rules about contact with new intelligent species. Captain Yunji read the message with mixed feelings. "They'll want to study the Vralkan," she told her officers. "Maybe take some away for testing." "We won't let that happen," Taiho said firmly. "These Vralkan are heroes. They saved us." On the 3rd day, the wounded Vralkan opened its eyes. Minho was sitting beside it, reading a book out loud, even though he didn't know if the creature could understand the words. He just wanted to provide some kind of comfort. When those amber eyes opened and focused on him, the boy's heart leaped. "You're awake!" he cried. "Dr. Sunho, it's awake!" The doctor came running. He checked the Vralkan's responses, its breathing, its heart rate. "Remarkable," he muttered. "Absolutely remarkable. By all rights, you should still be unconscious." The creature tried to stand but couldn't. Its leg was still healing, and it was too weak. It made a frustrated sound. "Don't try to move yet," Minho said. "You're hurt really bad. You have to rest." The Vralkan looked at the boy, then at the windows where its packmates waited. It made a complex series of sounds, rumbles, and low barks. Outside, the 7 Vralkan responded with their own sounds. "They're talking," Dr. Sunho said in wonder. "It's actually communicating with them." Over the next few days, the Vralkan healed faster than anyone expected. Whatever their biology was, it seemed designed to recover quickly from injuries. The burns faded to scars. The broken leg strengthened. The wounds closed. During this time, something beautiful happened. People from the colony started visiting the medical center. They brought gifts, food, blankets, even toys that Minho had suggested might be interesting for a Vralkan. At first they were hesitant, but Minho showed them there was nothing to fear. A young woman named Jisoo brought fresh meat from the colony's food supplies. The Vralkan sniffed it carefully before eating. It looked at Jisoo with what seemed like gratitude. An old man named Kwangsu, who had lost his son in previous raids, came with his grandson. "I wanted to thank you," he told the Vralkan, even though it couldn't understand his words. "You saved my grandson. You saved all our children." The creature watched the old man with intelligent eyes. Then slowly, carefully, it lowered its massive head in what could only be interpreted as a bow. People gasped. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. This was a thinking being showing respect and understanding. Meanwhile, researchers like Dr. Tae-hyun began documenting everything. They studied the Vralkan's behavior, their communication patterns, their social structure. The pack of 7 outside never left their post. They took turns hunting for food, but at least 4 were always present, watching over their wounded companion. "They have a sophisticated pack system," Tae-hyun explained to Captain Yoonji. "Complex social bonds. They make decisions as a group. This isn't just instinct, this is culture." By the end of the week, the wounded Vralkan could stand. It walked with a limp, but it walked. The first thing it did was go to the window. Its packmates on the other side pressed close to the glass. They touched noses through the barrier, making soft sounds of reunion. Then it turned and looked for Minho. The boy rushed over, and the creature bent down to touch its forehead to the child's chest, just as it had done in the forest that first day. "You're going to be okay," Minho said, tears running down his face. "You're really going to be okay." When the Galactic Council delegation arrived, they found something they never expected. They found a human colony that had integrated Vralkan into their daily life. They found children playing near the pack with supervision. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. Winter had come to New Haven Colony, bringing purple snow that fell gently from the sky and covered the red trees in sparkling frost. The colony looked different now, not just because of the season, but because of all the changes that had happened. The damaged walls had been rebuilt, stronger than before. But now there was something new. A section of the wall had been modified with larger gates and ramps. These were made so the Vralkan pack could enter and exit the colony easily. Signs in both human writing and simple symbols helped everyone understand the shared spaces. Minho was 8 years old now. He had grown a little taller, and his face had lost some of its baby softness. But his eyes still held the same kindness that had led him to help an injured creature in the forest. Every morning, he would wake up early and go to the eastern meadow. This was where the Vralkan pack had made their home, in a large shelter that humans and Vralkan had built together. The shelter was open on one side so the creatures could come and go as they pleased, but it protected them from the worst weather. This particular morning, Minho brought breakfast, fresh meat from the colony's food stores and some vegetables that Dr. Tae-hyun had discovered the Vralkan actually enjoyed eating. Barum was waiting for him, as always. The great creature had healed completely from its injuries. Its fur had grown back over the burned areas, though the scars beneath could still be felt. Its leg was strong again. Only someone who looked closely could see the slight irregularity in how it walked. "Good morning, Barum," Minho said, setting down the food. The Vralkan touched its nose to the boy's head in greeting, making a sound that Minho had learned meant something like hello or friend. The other 7 Vralkan were there too. Minho had learned all their personalities over the past months. There was Nara, the large female who was actually the pack leader. There was Gyeong, a younger male who was playful and curious. There was Barum, an older female with wise eyes, and 4 others, each unique, each special. As Minho sat with the pack, other children began arriving. This had become a morning ritual. With their parents' permission and adult supervision, children from the colony would visit the Vralkan before school. At first, only a few brave ones came. Now there were usually 15 or 20 children each morning. Nari's younger sister, now 6 years old, ran up to Gyeong. The young Vralkan lowered himself so she could climb on his back. He walked slowly around the meadow with her, making sure she didn't fall. Her delighted laughter rang through the cold air. "Remember when people were terrified of them?" said a voice behind Minho. It was Jisoo, the young woman who had been one of the first adults to bring gifts to Baram. She now worked as a liaison between the colony and the pack. Now look at us. Children riding Vralkan like they're pets. They're not pets, Minho said quickly. They're friends, partners. You're right, Jesu said, smiling. I shouldn't have said that. Partners is the right word. Dr. Taehyun arrived next, carrying his research equipment. Over the past months, he had dedicated himself to understanding Vralkan communication. He had made remarkable progress. Good morning, everyone, he said. He pulled out a tablet that showed various symbols and simple pictures. He pointed to one, a circle with lines radiating from it. He made a specific sound, something between a rumble and a bark. Baram looked at the symbol and responded with the same sound. That means sun or day, Taehyun explained to the children watching. The Vralkan don't have written language like we do, but they understand symbols, and their vocal communication is far more complex than we initially thought. He showed another symbol, wavy lines. He made a different sound. Nara responded with the same sound, then walked to the water trough and drank. Water, Taehyun said. We're building a bridge between our languages. It's slow, but we're making real progress. Minho had been Taehyun's most dedicated student. The boy had a natural gift for understanding the Vralkan. He could read their body language in ways that most adults couldn't. When Baram was hungry, Minho knew before the creature even approached the food. When Gyeong wanted to play, Minho could tell just by the position of his ears. You have a special connection with them, Taehyun had told the boy once. Not just because you saved Baram, but because you see them as equals. You don't talk down to them or treat them as lesser beings. That's rare, even now. School started at 9 o'clock, so the children said their goodbyes to the pack and headed to class. Minho's teacher was a woman named Sumin. She had modified her curriculum to include lessons about Vralkan culture and biology. Learning about the beings they now lived alongside seemed natural and important. Today we're going to talk about pack structure, Soman announced to the class. The Vralkan have a very organized social system. Can anyone tell me who leads Baram's pack? Minho raised his hand. Nara does. She's the oldest and strongest female, but they all make decisions together. Baram is the best fighter, but he doesn't boss everyone around. They work as a team. Exactly right, Minho. This is different from how many Earth Wolves function. The Vralkan seem to have a more democratic approach. Another student, a boy named Hajun, raised his hand. My dad says that other colonies are having trouble making friends with their Vralkan. Why did it work here but not there? Someone thought about this carefully. That's a very good question. I think it's because we approached them with respect and kindness first. Other colonies are trying to use technology or force, but the Vralkan respond to genuine friendship. They're intelligent beings with emotions and memories. You can't trick them or force them. You have to earn their trust. After school, Minho had a special job. 3 times a week, he went to the communications center where Ambassador Jiwoo had set up a temporary office. The Galactic Council wanted regular reports on the human Vralkan integration, and Minho had become an important part of those reports. Tell me what's new, Jiwoo said as Minho sat down. Gyeong learned to play fetch, Minho said excitedly. He actually brings the ball back. And Baram showed us where there's a sick tree in the forest. The Vralkan know which trees are healthy and which ones aren't. They can tell just by smelling them. Jiwoo typed notes on her computer. This is valuable information. It shows they have detailed knowledge of their environment that we can learn from. When are the people from the other colonies coming? Minho asked. Next week. We have representatives from 5 different colonies who want to learn from New Haven's success. You'll need to help show them how it's done. The idea made Minho nervous. He didn't think of himself as a teacher or an expert. He had just helped a hurt animal, well, a hurt-thinking being. But apparently that made him important somehow. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and purple, something special happened. Minho was at home helping his mother cook dinner. Nari was drawing pictures at the table. Daeho was fixing a broken lamp. There was a knock at the door. When Daeho opened it, Baram stood there. The Vralkan coming to someone's home was still unusual enough that Daeho's hand went instinctively to his side, where he used to keep his weapon. But he didn't carry it anymore. None of the colonists did, at least not inside the colony itself. Minho, Daeho called. Your friend is here. The boy came to the door. Baram lowered his head and made a specific sound, one that meant come or follow. The creature turned and started walking toward the forest. Can I go? Minho asked his parents. Yejin looked worried, but she nodded. Be back before full dark, and take your comm device. Minho grabbed his jacket and followed Barum. The Vralkan led him into the forest, following a path that the pack had worn over the months. They walked for about 20 minutes, deeper than Minho usually went. Then they came to a clearing the boy had never seen before. The other 7 Vralkan were there, and with them were 3 more. These were Vralkan that Minho didn't recognize. They were from a different pack, their fur slightly darker, their eyes a deeper shade of amber. Nara made a complex series of sounds. The 3 newcomers responded. Then all the Vralkan looked at Minho. The boy understood what was happening. Barum's pack was introducing him to another pack. They were vouching for him, telling these new Vralkan that humans could be trusted. Slowly, carefully, one of the new Vralkan approached Minho. It was a male, bigger than Baram, with scars across its muzzle. The creature sniffed the boy thoroughly, then made a sound. Barum responded with what Minho had learned was a confirmation or agreement sound. The scarred Vralkan lowered its head to Minho's level and looked directly into his eyes. The boy didn't look away. He had learned that looking away was seen as either fear or disrespect. Instead, he reached out slowly and touched the creature's nose. The Vralkan made a sound that might have been approval. Then it touched its forehead to Minho's chest, just as Baram had done all those months ago. Trust given. Trust accepted. Over the next weeks, more Vralkan packs began appearing near the colony. Word had spread among their species that this place was safe, that the humans here were different. Captain Yunji and her team had to quickly establish new protocols for handling multiple packs. The representatives from other colonies arrived and were amazed by what they saw. Children playing with Vralkan. Scientists working alongside the creatures to map the forest.